One way to separate politics from economics would be to pay back the remaining money that's lent by the U.S. Treasury. Do you have a time frame for when that 30% stake? The stock is still below the IPO price. Do you have an idea when the Treasury will be paid back the other half?
Well, not to parse words, but you say lent.
Right, okay.
Okay, they lent us money. We paid all that back. They provided preferred interest with a preferred stock with a 9% coupon. We've paid all that back plus dividends and interest. And we held the largest IPO in the history of the world. And most of that went to the federal government. They own 27% on a fully diluted basis. And they're just like every other shareholder. They can sell it when they want. And it is perverse, but I know I have some understanding of capital markets. And although we produce record profits, why isn't the stock at record levels? Well, part of it is because we have a big shareholder and we don't know when they're going to leave. Because as part of the bankruptcy, you've heard the structure in the financial world, it was let's take the good assets of the bank and call it good bank and bad bank. Well, we had liquidation motors. And liquidation motors was we left all of the quote-unquote toxic assets behind, if you will. Mm-hmm. And there were hundreds of millions of shares that went to, there was a complicated, I won't draw any conclusions or make judgments about who got a good deal, who didn't. It had to be done quickly. And again, there are many paths to the solution. Did it work? But we had to give those several hundreds of millions of shares to the liquidation motor shareholders. And some of those largely were bondholders. Well, when the stock really swooned late last year is because we dropped a couple hundred million shares on them and they flushed them to the market. So a lot of our big shareholders look at a big holder like the federal government and say, when are they going to exit? And the answer is, candidly, I don't know.
And you can understand the hue and cry in Congress, though, if the U.S. government sold shares that are 30% below the IPO price, the scream would be, tax holders are getting fleeced, they sold at a loss, bad move.
Well, again, I won't tell you who I asked the question, is the federal government a private equity firm, or were they acting on behalf of we, the people? We are the government. So was our economy, was our citizenship properly served? What if we didn't collect that $150 billion in taxes? Oh, by the way, if we had failed, we had a $24 billion pension shortfall, which we've now worked down to around 12 or 13 billion. That would have gone to the PBGC, and the government would have had to take up that $20 billion liability. It's much more complicated than you get in a 20-second blurb on the evening news or a quick thing on in an article. It's complicated. This is a complicated bankruptcy on a scale that I think the average citizen in this country doesn't have the interest, quite frankly. So I would say...
How would you like them to sell?
How would I like them to sell? Well, recognizing this may show up in Washington, I think it ought to be a very controlled... I mean, I think a good way to come out and say we own 500 million shares and we sell 50 million shares every quarter for the next 10 quarters. Or something where...
Dollar cost averaging. Mm-hmm.
I would just say they're not there to get the last dollar. By the way, when you say there's only one automobile company that owes the government any money. That's Ford. We were offered $12 billion. The Michigan delegation was working on our behalf. When I came in, we could apply, and I'm sure we would have been granted $10 to $12 billion of low-interest Department of Energy loans for clean and high tech. And I said, we're done with that. And we nixed it. So did Chrysler. Ford has taken, and I don't fault them, but I just say the perverseness of it all is their governments helped their companies to kind of shape and mold without too much of a heavy hand, shape and mold the direction of technology and how the economy evolves. I don't see anything. It's not a religious issue. It's something that's pragmatic, and companies that's done for companies around the globe all the time.